This is Chris Smallcomb. He's let me see if I got your new position right, the head meteorologist in charge at the Reno NWS. And he is here to predict the future for us, tell us what we're in store for this winter. Good news only, please.
Very
Take
good.
it away.
Yeah, no, appreciate the invite. If you hear any commotion in the background, it's the kids doing what kids do on the weekends. So I've been watching the presentations here. I've been kind of eyes off to the side, seeing my chances of getting into Western states evaporate, much like the second half of winter did last year. So I guess I'll have to look at some other races to do next year, which is all good. All right. So again, Chris Smallcomb, meteorologist in charge with the National Weather Service in Reno. And I've been in Reno on and off since 2007, so science officer for a while. And then for roughly the last 10 years was the warning coordination meteorologist, which is our office's version of a PIO, or partner relations meteorologist. So now I'm more of a supervisory leadership role. We are planning on selecting a replacement warning coordination meteorologist, PIO, individual, but it probably will be, typical federal government. It's going to take a few months to do all that. So go ahead and share my screen here, and I'll just do the whole desktop here just to make it easy. So what we're going to do here is, of course, go through the winter outlook, one of my world famous weather briefings here. And yes, we do have an 8-ball in the office. We also have some dice. You just never know when you just need that latest in science and technology to predict the future. Last 3 winters, we've had some good months, but as a whole, they've been relatively unremarkable. So our drought, continues. It's not the worst drought we've ever seen, but it's ongoing. We had the monsoon showed up this summer for a lot of us with plenty of thunderstorms with heavy rainfall. So I think that helped put the kibosh a bit on fire season in the Eastern Sierra. But we did have some significant fires in California that provided smoke. And then we had that heat wave around Labor Day, which is really impressive. That's a whole separate talk in of itself, just how anomalous that heat wave was and what I think that means for climate change. I think that's a sign of the future. We're going into a 3rd La Nina in a row for this winter. So what does that mean? And, we've had some decent storms already, early November, and then again just recently, and again this weekend. So what does all this mean for the upcoming winter? One thing, I was listening to the presentation about kind of decision making, and the things I heard is like, 90% of people do look at a weather forecast before they go out into the backcountry. I'm like, that's fantastic. But that still means that 1 out of 10 people don't look at the weather before they go outdoors, which I can't fathom that, especially given all the technology and everything on your iPhone that's available to today on weather apps and whatnot. So this is actually a new graphic from the NRCS that looks at their snow tells as a function of each month for the past winter. So you can really get a sense for where did the snowpack build in terms of time for each of the most recent winters. And this is a kind of a lump sum for anywhere from Lake Tahoe down into the Walker River Basin. The snow tells around Mammoth specifically are operated more by California DWR, whereas the snow tells from roughly Sonora Pass northward are more NRCS operated snow tells. But the key message is all the same here, that the last 3 winters in a row have been relatively unremarkable, pretty close to the median overall, plus or minus. But we've had some really big months. I mean, last year it was all about December. I mean, can you imagine if we didn't have that December, what last winter would have looked like? And then 2019, it was all about. Let's see if I can get my screen here. It's all about January and February, and same in 2017. So really the message is, you've all been here long enough to know this, but for new people to the area, really the climate in the Sierra is all about 1 or 2 big months making or breaking an entire winter. So that's where another tricky aspect to seasonal weather prediction is sometimes it just boils down to a big month making a winter, sometimes just a big couple weeks making that entire winter. So right now our snowpack is actually doing pretty well, considering we're just turning into early December now. This is a view across the entire West here. And all the greens and blues are above normal. The oranges are near to below normal. So, the Rockies, near normal to maybe below normal down into New Mexico. But out here in the Sierra, we're well above normal, 150 to even 200% of normal into central Nevada, and across up into Oregon and Washington. So a really good start with the character of the storms that we've had. They've generally been a little bit cooler. As I'll show here in another slide, we've been pretty chilly lately, and so that's it's good for snow production with any storms that we get. I picked up the Mammoth Pass Snowtel from California DWR here. Just updated this morning, and the blue line is the snow water content that's been observed so far, and the red line is what is the median in the 1991 to 2020 timeframe. So roughly we're about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of normal. And that's even before additional precipitation that we would get today and tomorrow. So that's great news. That gives us some money in the bank, some money in the savings account, right, for those periods where we do start to dry out. And we always have those, even in busy winters. We always have multiple week periods where things get really quiet. And so that's good, putting us ahead of schedule so far. So the other aspect, as I mentioned to you already, is we actually has been pretty cool. This is looking at the high and low temperature data from our co-op site in Lee Vining. It's the closest site of a similar elevation that I could find, as I'll talk about in a minute. The Mammoth Lakes co-op site has not been online for quite some time. And the blue bars represent the observed high and low temperature ranges, where in the tan shading is what is normal. And so you can see a lot of these blue bars going down well below that normal range. In fact, if an arbitrary period, October 23rd through December 1st, is actually the coldest it's been since records started at the Lee Vining site since 1988. So if you think it's been chilly recently, yes, that is definitely the case, and the data supports it. And as I mentioned, the Mammoth Lakes co-op site, where we would usually get official snow observations from at the ranger station there, has not been reporting since January of 2021. We've actually struggled to have a site that we can get reliable observations from day in, and day out. And that's why it's a struggle with any site. It's not just Mammoth. We're finding folks who are around and who are willing to take weather observations each and every day, year round, is a struggle, especially being a volunteer organization. So Lee Vining is the closest site that we have that kind of official daily data from. Of course, the Snowtels are a huge asset as well, because that's automated data that we can still leverage all the time. So this is kind of a random thing, but I think a lot of you probably have seen this recently. In late November, we had all those inversions, and so there was probably a good week-long period where Mono Lake, around Lee Vining, and around Crowley as well, dense fog each and every day, overnight and into the morning. And that's all to do the temperature inversions, where we get that cold air settling into lower elevations with warm air overhead. And so this is just screen capture from November 22nd at Mono Lake, where at the lowest spot that we have weather data from, it was 17 degrees on the east side of the lake, 23 in Lee Vining. But then up on Lee Vining Hill, about 2,000 feet above, it was 43 degrees. So really impressive inversion that helped trap all that moisture there. So that was another aspect to that cold air that we've had recently, is that does tend to promote the temperature inversions as well, which has ramifications for the snowpack. If you're getting warmer temperatures higher up, but cooler down low, that can change the character of the snowpack in unusual ways compared to your typical temperature profile, where you see temperatures decreasing as you head up in altitude. So let's take a look at the weather outlook, and we'll start in the short term and work our way out to the long term. That was actually earlier this week. We had some really good lenticulars here. I went out for a run after work, and that's my friend the rattlesnake there at Hidden Valley. So the question is, something sinister or something good lurking for this winter? So let's take a look at this weekend. There's my daughter Savannah on a quasi sketchy use of a teeter-totter. We actually discovered that they're really good sleds in the snow. So she loves it when dad pushes her around on that. This is about 0.2 seconds before we ran into the GoPro in the snow. So let's take a look at the snowfall. This is going to be for Mammoth Lakes at 7,900 feet. Of course, snowfall is dramatically variable in the Eastern Sierra based on elevation and distance from the crest. So I just picked a point, in town, and then we're going to look at a box and whisker diagram here. So the blue shaded area is, what I consider unsurprising potential snowfall, whereas the whiskers, the outliers, are like, whoa, okay, something unusual happened. So we'll start on the low end. There are some models that actually keep the rain snow line pretty close to almost 8,000 feet at times. And so that is a potential outcome. We could see a little bit of rain even sneak into some of the lower elevations of the Eastern Sierra. So if that happens, the kind of the bare minimum would be about 4, maybe 6 inches of snowfall, wet, heavy snow in town, again at 7,900 feet. What I consider the underperform or the lower bound of unsurprising is 7 inches. And if you look at percentages, you look at 75% chance of reaching that amount. If you told me, hey, for this site, for this point, if you needed one number and that's it, there you go. 10 inches is the best guess. The overperform, which is kind of that upper bound of what I consider unsurprising, would be 16 inches. And then the outlier at the top end is 22 inches of additional snowfall in town. And that's if the stars align, we stay colder. And actually, one of the models, I was looking at that stuff this morning, the high-res stuff, the HER and the NAM, we're both showing kind of that little bit warmer, more kind of hit and miss, showery type of stuff. But the GFS is like coming in like, whoa, here we go. Even up here in Reno, it's showing 5 to 10 inches of snow tonight. So there's still a lot of variability, even though the storm is literally on our doorstep. And it showed up here in the box and whisker for this event. It's like, wow, how much variability in scenarios, even with relatively short lead times. And so I kind of wanted to show, this is from our national blend of models for that 50th percentile. So that kind of that best guess from it showing 28 inches of snow up at the summit to 15 inches at 8,400 feet to 7 inches at 8,100 feet to 2 inches at 7,100 feet out at the airport. So just tremendous variability here. Now our national blend of models takes in every single model. So the HER, the NAM, the European, the GFS, all its ensemble members, basically just one big stew pot of models. And it's bias corrected and calibrated in various ways. And then it gets spit out onto a 2.5 kilometer resolution grid. And so that's what you're seeing here. These boxes are roughly 2.5 kilometer resolution boxes. And so obviously for the summit of the mountain, it's probably going to be higher than that 28 inches there. But this is the tool that we use to baseline our forecast in the National Weather Service. So Reno and every other forecast office uses this to baseline our forecast. But what it also does is allow us to look at the full spectrum of probabilities and possibilities for models to give people a more complete picture of the weather forecasts. Show the quote in the previous presentation, all forecasts are wrong, but some are useful. That's kind of my take on that quote. We want to make a forecast useful. And so using this national blend of models is kind of how we're doing that to give that full spectrum of probability. So let's get nuts here. Let's look at the 95th percentile. Let's have a little fun here. Seeing like everything came together. There's 15 inches at the lower elevations of town and 30 inches at the upper elevations and 40 up at the summit and some of our higher elevations to the south, 52 there. But of course, being the 95th percentile, there's only a 5% chance of that actually occurring. So just as an example of some of the data that we take a look at. All right, so let's move along to the week 2 outlook here. We are leaning above normal on precipitation, at least through mid-December, and cooler than normal. So that's good for potential snow situations, where we don't have those really warm atmospheric rivers come in. And in fact, the atmospheric river landfall probability chart for our latitude, so looking between 35 and 40 degrees north, is fairly void of any significant signals of those atmospheric rivers. So the storm door does remain open, but we're not seeing any of those really warm Pineapple Express signals right yet, at least through about mid-December. Probably weak to moderate storms coming out of the west or northwest, a little bit colder pattern there. So that's good news, in terms of snow, but not seeing any blockbusters, put it that way, in the forecast for the next couple of weeks. So how about the winter outlook here? Being the meteorologist in charge of the office now, I can ask people to do things, right? And so I said back in late August, what is your gut feeling about the winter? So super scientific weather outlook here. Well, the majority were going warmer and wetter than normal for the coming winter. So we'll see if that pans out. Thus far, that warmer, I don't know about that, because we've actually been on the cool end of things so far. All right, so getting more into the science, every winter it's about El Nino versus La Nina. And we are solidly going into a La Nina situation for this winter. And that's that top diagram here where we're looking at temperatures in the Pacific Ocean being cooler than normal. That tends to drive the storm track further to the north, up into the Pacific Northwest. More storms there, fewer storms to our south, down towards LA, Vegas, Phoenix. Here in the Sierra, we're kind of caught in between. So that's where we rely on our scatter plots, looking at previous years. So here's for Western and Northern Nevada, and here's for the Eastern Sierra. The La Nina winters are the blue dots, and the vertical axis of precipitation October through March. Well, shocking, we've had some very dry La Ninas. We've also had some very wet La Ninas. So based on past experience with La Nina, anything is on the table for this coming winter. So now, unfortunately, El Nino, La Nina at our latitude doesn't tell us a whole lot about wintertime precipitation. Now, the one quirk, though, is we're going into a third La Nina in a row. And this actually has only happened 2 other times since 1950. So what were those third winters like? So 1976 and 2001. Well, across the region, generally drier than normal as a whole for the winter, but not dramatically so. And, if you look at Bishop here, actually 2001 ended up being roughly near normal and actually a little bit cool. So that's great news for snow. But it's 1975, 76 was a little bit warm and dry. So I think this is more just interesting. I don't think this necessarily pulls me in any direction for the coming winter. The fact that this is the triple dip, the ice cream flavor La Nina coming in. So let's take a look at the official Climate Prediction Center outlook. So we'll start with the month of December. This one was just released, and I think this is heavily based on the fact that we're active going into the first week or so of the month, and so leaning above normal. So looking at the pie charts here, definitely a heavy favorite for near to above normal on precip for this month, and actually a heavy favorite for near to below normal on temperatures, which is, in the new climate, a little bit unusual that we would have a month that would end up cooler than normal. So that could help our winter as a whole on temperatures be maybe a little bit closer to the long-term averages, again, unless we have some shocking warm spells in January and February. So again, yeah, I kind of already mentioned this, it depends on these early month storms, and then we'll just have to see how things shake out in the mid to later parts of the month. But we're starting off good. We're starting off in a good pattern. Now, for the rest of winter, we are in that dreaded equal chances, which is the La Nina signal. Really anything is possible at this point. About a month or so ago, I gave a talk to the Carson City Public Works folks, and I walked in and they're like, Chris, just please say something other than 50-50, which is what I always say. Well, here, how about this? How about 33, 33, 34? And that kind of quieted the room down pretty quick. But that's the reality, is really any scenarios on the table for the balance of winter. Even if I did these charts for January, February, and March, it would show basically the same thing. March seems to kind of becoming an honorary member of winter lately. It seems like we've had more active Marches than say 10 or 20 years ago. So the winter are starting later, but maybe taking a little bit later to wrap up. So I think we always have to look at March as a month, but really no change in the message is really anything is on the table for this point between now and the end of March. We'll see stormy patterns, we'll see dry patterns, warm and cold periods, all that jazz. All right, so all this means is really anything on the table. The same logic applies to what our ultimate snowpack and water supply outlook will be for next year. It would take a really big winter like a 2017 to erase our drought. And even with an average winter, some of those impacts, those long-term impacts, including like health to some of the vegetation, will continue into 2023. There's a little quirky connection with La Ninas that we've seen. Some of our bigger flood events like 2017 and even 1997 have been in low-end La Nina situations. It doesn't necessarily apply as much to the Walker River and to the Eastern Sierra, but it's something we keep an eye on up here for the Truckee and the Carson rivers. Even if we end up with a drier than normal winter, we're still going to see snowstorms, inside sliders, cold spells, windstorms, all that jazz. So, and in fact, actually, if we were to end up with a drought winter, those inside sliders, those storms that come out of the Great Basin or out of the north, those Alberta Clipper analogs, those actually increase in frequency during those style winters. All right, so staying informed with the Weather Service, and then I'll wrap up with a couple little potpourri items, and we'll be done. Is of course our free cut chart briefing emails. If you aren't already on them, I think most of you already are. You can sign up at sending me an email. We send those out as needed ahead of significant weather events. You can check out our forecast discussion. I think this is a really powerful tool, regardless of whether or not we issue a freakout chart briefing on certain days. You can get these by 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. each day. If you just Google NWS Reno forecast discussion, you can get our discussion. You can bookmark it. So I'll bring up the example from today. Here, it is a text-only discussion, but it's packed with really good information. So if you're willing to spend like 5 minutes and each day and kind of go through things here, we talk about confidence levels, scenarios, things that freak the forecaster out. You're kind of reading the forecaster's mind here. So definitely, bookmark this link, and it's a really powerful resource for information. Social media, of course, at NWS Reno on Twitter and Facebook, as long as Twitter exists, apparently. We'll be there. INWS, this is a really good tool to get alerted anytime we issue official watches, warnings, or advisories. If you Google INWS, you can sign up for it. This is for our public safety partners. We don't necessarily have the IT resources to do a resource like this for the entire general public, but you can sign up for it and you'll get text or email alerts anytime we issue a watch warning advisory for a geographic area of interest to you. So you can draw like a polygon or pick a point, and anytime we issue anything, you'll get alerted to it year round. So floods, fire weather, avalanche. If you guys issue an avalanche warning and we relay it through our systems, it'll come through INWS. You can always call us, so if you read all the information, you look at the model data yourself and forecast discussion, you still have some questions or just want to talk to a forecaster, we are here 24/7, 365. In fact, at 4 in the morning, if the phone rings, it's usually one of the school districts or NDOT or Caltrans wanting to talk to us about snow, or the airports. But feel free to always give us a call. That is a non-public number. It goes right to our forecast operations. So use that, amongst friends here. We do that. So we can provide on-site support during major disasters, usually flood events. We'll staff an EOC. Where's your app? I mentioned about using apps on your phone for weather information. Just bear in mind that we don't have an official weather service app. That actually, a lot of the data on apps may or may not come from us. So if you notice major discrepancies in what your phone app is telling you with what we're saying, that's why. And I couldn't necessarily say why there's that discrepancy, but if you ever are like, wow, this is really big difference here, I'm concerned that my confidence is shot, give us a call or send us an email if you need clarification on what's coming. All right, specific to avalanche support, a couple things here that I want to highlight. We are continuing our backcountry forecast summary that we always have done for years now. We do this for specific elevation bands in Mono County, 8 to 10,000 feet and then 10,000 feet and higher. This is where we address snowfall scenarios and confidence levels, liquid amounts, wind, and things like that. So you can find that here on our NWS Reno website. The other thing that we're starting, we started the last couple of years, kind of experimental, kind of under the hood type of thing, are these, it's a new avalanche weather page that's kind of a consistent look and feel between NWS offices. But from here, you get this tabular forecast, and this comes directly from our gridded database. So you can see here an example. We have Mammoth Mountain at various elevations, so you can get specific temperatures and winds and liquid equivalent and snowfall and things like that. So you can get that from us. The NWS Las Vegas doesn't have a fancy page like this yet, but they still produce this avalanche specific guidance here. So and I can share the PDF of these slides after the fact, and you can share those. You can get that for the Inyo County points in your forecast area there. I just want to mention, we will relay all watches and warnings via our official systems and via our social media. So try and get the word out of any of these high hazard situations, and just like what's going on right now. We also provide spot weather forecasts. If any of you are involved in search and rescue, we can provide spot weather forecasts for search and rescue situations, or if you're involved in that. Always give us a call, saying you're heading out to an incident and, hey, what's the weather going to be like over the next few hours or something like that. Don't ever hesitate to give us a call on that. If it's a longer term response, we can do an official written spot forecast or like an incident action plan or something like that. And you can always just give us a call to initiate that process as well. We do special event briefings. You know, if there's like a major public event and there's like a law enforcement or emergency management presence, we can do special event briefings for those like a day or two ahead of time. You know, we've done stuff for like the home football games here at UNR. Or Burning Man, just because there is a large public presence, they're exposed to weather elements and things like that. And emergency manager or law enforcement or a fire department will request a briefing or something like that. So we can always do something like that. So there's that quote. I love this one. I actually use it now when I interview entry-level meteorologists. So I say, all forecasts are wrong, but some are useful. And I say, what do you think about that? It's a really provocative question. It's interesting to see where they go with it. My hope is they go with it toward the probabilistic forecasts and scenarios and things like that. But every once in a while, somebody will get like outright offended at the quote. You know, oh, how could you say that? Our models are getting better and better, and you know they're the most accurate they've ever been. And it's like, well, okay, that's your response. Fair enough. Not really where I was going, but it's all good. But so, how are we making forecasts more useful? You know, the ultimate value of a weather forecast is, does it help you make a good decision? A forecast doesn't have to be perfect, but is it good enough to help you make a good decision? And that to me is the ultimate value of any weather forecast, of any weather model. So giving you scenarios, what is that most likely outcome? What is that best guess versus what might be the worst case scenario? But all about being more prepared. Confidence levels, what does that forecaster experience say? You know, the models are doing more and more of our job each and every day, but the forecaster experience really still matters. It's what gets that forecast to the finish line in my way of looking at the world. Probabilities, you know, what are those thresholds? What are the, you know, so threshold probabilities? 2 inches of snow might not matter to you, but a foot, that might. And so what is the probability of getting that 1 foot of snow? We have the data now with that national blend of models to be able to provide that kind of information. You know, of course, the predictability spectrum, you know, 7 to 14 days out, we're looking at those broad changes in outlooks. 2 to 5 days, that's where we can hone in on what kind of storm we're looking at. But honestly, it may be only a day or so of lead time on the rain snow line elevations, NCFRs, those sort of super detailed high impact weather features. And I'll kind of wrap up here. Always important to know, what is the difference between a watch, warning, and advisory when it comes to weather outlooks? Well, a watch is when we have a 50-50 confidence in an event occurring. But once we get our confidence levels to 80%, we have a decision to make. Is the event going to be life or property threatening? That's where we issue a warning. But if it's going to be mainly a nuisance event, like you're going to still get to your destination. It's just going to take you a lot longer and it's going to be obnoxious. That's why we issue an advisory. So wind advisory versus a high wind warning. If we issue a high wind warning, that's like, okay, stuff's going to be flying. If you're outside, you could be putting your safety at risk. Whereas an advisory is like, yeah, it's going to be annoying, but you'll still get where you need to go. So this is a random thing I thought I'd share with my friends who are out in the backcountry a lot. I do a lot of running, and I go to places that, you know, on or off trail. Recently around Reno, I've encountered a couple of these installations. This is over in Hidden Valley, and so it looks like an official Weather Service thing. You know, it's got our logo and sticker on it. It's got a webcam. And it's like, oh wow, that's nifty. Well, it's not. Sure as heck isn't ours. I pinged a bunch of people, and nobody could really figure out what these were. In fact, I came across another one of these on a NV Energy power pole. We had a guy call our office screaming at us saying, get your stuff off my installation. Like, oh, what this is? Well, long story short, apparently these are crypto mining devices, and they establish networks in remote areas to do this. So if you ever come across one of these, especially if it has our sticker on it, that might be what's going on there. So I'll end with that. This is a picture from the Mammoth Trail Fest from Josh Ray. My wife and I, and the kids actually, we participated in the first Trail Fest back in September, had a blast. We definitely plan on being back again next year. So that's what I got, and hopefully you got a few good nuggets out of that, and I'll end it there.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Yep.
I'm curious where your gut feeling was on that pie chart about the winter outlook.
You know, I did go with the wetter than normal, but I went near normal on temperatures. So far so good. You're right. So far so good here. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Do we have any questions in the crowd for Chris? Looks like you're getting off easy.
All right. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. Anything on the chat?
Hey, I got one.
Yeah, what do you got?
Is there a model that's been performing better than others over the last 3 years?
The question is there a model that's been performing better than others over the last few years?
So if you look at the bulk statistics in terms of like, the big picture patterns in the atmosphere, where the jet stream is, where the highs and lows are and stuff, generally the European Center guidance, ECMWF data performs better as a whole compared to like the American model, the GFS, and the Canadian model. From our experience at NWS Reno, I mean, the European does well, but there's been times where it's way overdone on precipitation, especially at that 7 to 14 day lead time. It's all these. I'll tell you, if I could add up all the storms at 7 to 14 days that the European has been showing us this year, we'd be like at 400% of normal snowpack right now. So I don't think there's any one model that you can always say is going to be better. I think you always have to look at all of them, and I think that's where the national blend of models tools are powerful, because it's putting everything into one pot. It's bias correcting and calibrating stuff. My last comment on that, there's a sleeper model that I think is always worth looking at, and it's actually the German icon model. It's a high resolution model that I always take a look at. It's deterministic, so it's just a single solution, but it always seems to have some intuition on some trends, and so I think it's worth looking at.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else in the crowd or in Zoom land? Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. All right, thanks, Chris.
Anytime. Take care, everyone.